Hello from Estonia and welcome to the Startup in Estonia podcast, produced by Startup Estonia and hosted this season by me, Adam Rang. It's okay not to be okay. If you remember one thing from this episode, then remember that, because life can be tough and some days are going to be better than others. Like, you already have so many responsibilities in your family, in your relationships, in your home. You've got bills to pay. You've got a pandemic to live through. And on top of all that, you're building a startup. Or perhaps you're listening to this because you're planning to build a startup while juggling another job or your studies. And building a startup can be one of the best things you ever do, but it can also be the most stressful and lonely thing you ever do. In fact, it can be all those things at the same time. And yet, until relatively recently, we used to pretend this wasn't the case. We convinced ourselves that startup founders need superhuman strength and little time for personal life or even sleep. But that's bullshit. Startup founders are humans who need those things just as much as anyone else. If someone says they are working continuously and getting virtually no sleep, then either they're not quite telling the truth or they're heading for a serious burnout. And more founders are now speaking up about the importance of mental health and opening up about their struggles. And talking about it is a good thing, whether that's on a podcast, a TED stage, or just with one other person that you can trust. It's the first step to getting the right help. And it may be all the help you need. And it's also going to help inspire other people to speak up and get help too. So it's okay not to be okay. You can acknowledge you have bad days, bad months, bad years. And there's just nothing more valuable than your health. And your mental health is just as important as your bodily health. And if you're building a startup, then it's not just your mental health that you have to think about. You also have a responsibility to support the mental health of your team. And what do you do if an employee develops a mental health problem? How do you create the conditions that help prevent that from happening in the first place? Or at least, creates an environment that means that they can get the support they need when it does happen. And you know what? It's good for business to have a mentally healthy team. That's not the only reason why you should support your team's mental health, of course. It's also the right thing to do. But at least it makes investing in it a no-brainer. And if you invest your time listening to this episode on the subject of supporting mental health, then we want to give you a good return on your investment, because we're going to talk about practical ways startups can support mental health. And we're going to look more closely at one startup that seems to be doing it right. So I'm joined by two guests from a startup that's already made a big investment into supporting mental health. That startup is Pipedrive, and our guests are Jorgen Matsi and Leelia Rohumaa. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
And a lot of people around the world know Pipedrive. You're one of Estonia's biggest startups. For those that don't know, can you give us your elevator pitch?
Yeah, Pipedrive was founded 10 years ago by 5 Estonians who I think already at the beginning knew some of the pain, what it means to have a startup. And what we do is we provide something very useful for sales teams. So it's a CRM, and it helps to find good leads and manage them, and also get to the results faster.
Okay, so some people, they might be using Excel at a very early stage to manage these kind of leads in a quite chaotic way, but you've got a much better platform for organizing that.
Exactly.
And how many customers do you have now? In what kind of countries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have customers over 150 countries, and over 90,000 sales teams are using our platform. So it's widely used, and we are very happy about it.
Good. And you've got a new office in Tallinn, which is very impressive from the outside. What's it like inside?
Yeah, it's even better inside.
Okay.
And actually, not only in Tallinn, but also in Tartu. Just this summer, we moved to the new office. And I need to say that I have never considered moving to Tartu, but now when the office is almost ready, then it's very tempting to think about it. But yeah, I think when talking about Tallinn office, then it's very cozy. It really provides this kind of environment where you can enjoy working and enjoy the people around you. And we have different teams like nature, music, sports, floors. So making sure that people also find their rooms and meeting rooms as fast as possible. So it's quite logical. And we have also very nice second floor, which is meant to be for gathering together. Okay, with COVID now it's a little bit more difficult. But yeah, to get people together, have a lunch together, or have a massage, or
really,
okay. Or play table tennis, or just relax and have a nice talk with your colleague.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of startups with table tennis. I've never heard of massage before at work. Interesting. Jorgen, Leelia, what are your roles at Pipedrive?
My job title is personal coach, but that doesn't have almost nothing to do with sports. So one of my kind of starting from the anecdotal, it's I think it was early this year. I explained my position to one of my friends, and he kind of thought about it a little and said, "Oh, so you're like a school psychologist, but in an organization or in a company." And this is something like that. So we do counseling work on individual level for basically anybody who is up for it. We do some organizational work, organizational psychology work together with the people and culture team on topics like company culture and what kind of in-house trainings to provide, what would be useful both in areas like soft skills, social performance, like public speaking, for example, or how to communicate with each other. Mental health topics are on our table, so both on the individual and on the group level. So the team currently. We do have a coaching team which consists of agile coaches, who do work on the organizational and mostly on the engineering level, and personal coaches work with anybody really. And there's 3 of us currently, and we all have backgrounds in psychology. So and have worked as counselors or therapists before. So.
Wow, 3 personal coaches. And do you report into HR, or where do you sit within the organization?
It currently, it doesn't matter that much, but technically we are a part of engineering organization actually, because it's the largest part of Pipedrive, and the creation of the coaching structure actually happened in a way that in engineering they moved more towards more independent teams and kind of more responsibilities towards every single engineer, as opposed to having kind of the traditional engineering model where you have a team of 4 to 6 engineers and you have a manager on top of them, and then you have 4 to 6 managers and you have a managers on top of them, and so you create this pyramid which kind of in modern engineering context creates a whole lot of problems. So they decided to go for more professional managers in larger teams, and then kind of the manager role really focusing on kind of the larger picture. And then they thought that, okay, like if we should also, if we want to have more professional managers, why not create a specialist role which would be really independent and kind of and that comes with the perks. Obviously, one of them is trust, because there are a lot of things that somebody wouldn't want to talk about to their manager. Doesn't matter if the relationship with the manager is good or bad, right? You can also imagine that if somebody really likes their manager and has a really good like personal connection, maybe they don't want to that's because they don't want to show themselves in a bad light, for example.
Yeah.
But if you have this kind of really independent role, such as ours, and kind of we have established and like that we work with the confidentiality is the central thing in our role. For example, I'm a member also of the Estonian Psychologists Association, and actually our code of ethics says that when working on an individual level, you work for the individual, which kind of creates this inherent confidentiality guarantee. And so trust is easily created as compared to maybe somebody who has like agenda from their own role or from the company's perspective. So you can really have this open space for self-development or for solving any kind of problems, be them work-related or otherwise. Because that's actually one of the questions I get asked most often, is that people often enter the coaching relationship with some kind of a work-related goal. For example, they want to improve in some area that is directly performance related. They want to become more efficient. They want to become better leads or to develop leadership skills. And then you get kind of you do some progress with that, and then after a while they say like, hey, but would it be okay if I would talk also about something not job related? And I'm like, yes, that's like literally it's brought out in our introductory page, but still people have this doubt or responsibility. But the role was also created with a notion in mind that whatever is bugging the person, if it's like personal topics, mental health topics, can even be like they can be connected to their social network outside the company, right? When it's bringing them down, then it will affect how they will perform at work.
It's interesting because until relatively recently, like it was seen as a bad thing to kind of mix your personal life and your work life, like, or bring your personal problems into work with you. And I guess that's really changed quite recently. Then people are much more willing to open up now and admit if they're having problems that are kind of affecting them at work. Or whereas maybe in the past people would think maybe it's going to affect my career if I admit to someone that I'm not doing so well because of some personal issue. Yeah,
just like I said, like that's I think one of the perks that comes with the role. Obviously, in smaller companies and these things do get discussed with managers and HR as well occasionally. But it's really good that there is this independent role that has no stake in this specific issue, that you can kind of, obviously you need to have like trust as well, so that they won't go and talk about it somewhere else.
What background do you have then in order to get this role?
I finished Tartu University with a master's degree in psychology, and then did some specialized like therapist training on top of that. Worked as a therapist for a little while, also taught in the university, and then kind of was thinking about what to do next after I had been on paternal leave with my kids, and there was Pipedrive wanting to consult me on how to create this role at first, and I was saying that okay, I can kind of give my opinion, no strings attached, whether you end up creating the role or not, or whether you're gonna choose me or not, and then they decided to hire me as the first one, and that was a completely surprising turn of events for me, because I didn't know about these roles, which actually do exist in other IT companies as well. Maybe not as dedicated and focused as in Pipedrive, but kind of I have found out that there are also people with therapy and psychology background working in other companies as well.
Yeah. I guess some people might be wondering, at what point do you hire someone like you? Because and who does it until your startup is big enough to afford to have someone dedicated to it? Who does that job before then? And what's the right point when you think like this startup is now the right size that we need people dedicated solely to kind of personal development and these kind of issues?
Like technically, I think that that air quotation marks, this job is done by managers and also when there is going to be a like a people department or HR department, but it does come with certain problems. So I would advise that before the company is large enough, I would say like maybe 100 plus people definitely, then it just needs to be a open topic, that mental health is a thing. Like it's you mentioned that people used to separate more like the home and work issues, right? But I always say that I kind of find also the term work-life balance a little bit odd, because like it's I'm still the same person, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm not leading two lives. Like it is gonna have a carryover whether I want it or not, and kind of trying extra hard maybe to keep that separation can actually, which is sometimes recommended, right? You shouldn't take your work at home and you shouldn't take your home to work, but really enforcing that can actually create extra problems. Like you'd be maybe better off when you kind of build more awareness and try to realize that you admit to that, okay, this is going to affect me. Like my work life is going to affect me how I feel at home, and vice versa. And kind of and then try to become aware about those connections and what affects what and how. And also like when you're, and I really like to use the term health in the sense that as opposed to the term that is used a lot, burnout. Like burnout kind of has this connotation that it's a binary condition, right? You are either burnt out or not, right? But when we're speaking about health, it becomes more apparent that obviously when we're talking about people, these are some kind of symptoms and traits and their interactions on a spectrum, right? So they're divided on a spectrum, because you can imagine that, okay, like you can be in ill health, right, and have it even worse, and you can be okay, and you can be better than okay, and you can be super excellent, and this goes for physical health, because you can be in super good physical condition, and you can be in not so good physical condition. Goes the same for mental health. Like we do normalize that sometimes you wake up from the bed and you can feel that your nose is a little bit congested, right? You see that something is a little bit off here. Same goes for mental health. Like you can wake up and just dislike the world, which you maybe didn't yet do yesterday, and you can become more aware about these things. So these things are on spectrum, and this should be normalized. And that's also like if you have some kind of if your mental health at home is diminished, or it's affected by your the condition of your social health, because the World Health Organization also talks about social health, the interactions between mental, physical, and social health. So, for example, if your social health is diminished, you're starting to feel more stressed out, more anxious about that, it's gonna affect you at work, because you're still gonna think about that. Maybe having some problems carries over to, you also mentioned sleep, carries over to your diminished sleep routine, and then you're going to be more tired at work. Maybe you feel your work performance is also kind of declining, and then you start to stress out about that. So and then you are maybe more stressed again when you go home in the evening. So it's all connected. It's kind of a matrix thing, and things are usually not black and white, that this is here and this is there, and it's either 1 or 0, but it's more complicated.
Maybe just something to add, as Jorgen mentioned, that when to actually have someone internally helping people with their mental health. Maybe one of the reasons why Pipedrive is successful is also because actually we had since beginning external coach who helped our executive team and our founders. So
even when it was a tiny group of people.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe this also helped to actually keep their stress down and actually help them to be successful for so long time. So yeah, I agree with Jorgen that I think as soon as possible, at least, even if not hiring internally immediately, but at least have someone who supports you from the beginning. But yeah, maybe one fun fact why Jorgen was meant to be joining our team is because he has very cool tattoo. So
yeah, the Pipedrive has these like stated values which are very central to our company culture and are talked about in hiring process, and one of the values is no excuses, and just by sheer coincidence, I had in the spring, way like couple of months before I knew anything about Pipedrive, really, I had amongst other things, I had no excuses tattooed on my arm. So,
so you rolled up your sleeve in the interview, and
yeah. It's a good like I'm your guy.
Leelia, what is your role in Pipedrive then?
Yeah, my role is people and culture manager, and what I do is I support people in Estonia, in Latvia, and both employees and the managers. but also I lead a team of HR operations and also learning and development. So actually the area of people's growth and learning and development is something where we cooperate very closely with personal coaches as well. And I think this is something to suggest to other organizations as well when they are thinking of having internal coaches. I think this kind of a cooperation, providing workshops, helps people to actually get to know personal coaches without first signing up for one-on-one coaching session, because I'm sure that many people are still a little bit scared, like I don't know, they're gonna do some voodoo and start from my childhood or something like that. Like in our organization also, we did this kind of be teachable couple of hours, and we had there also one live coaching session. So we asked one volunteer to join and bring some problem on the table. And I think people then realized that, okay, actually I go with a very easy topic, like, I don't know,
Yeah, I think it was some kind of like team related performance thing. I had just at that time I had I think I asked a few coaches, because obviously you don't have to publicly perform your thing. But I had a couple of coaches and I asked them, and one of them with whom I had just started, I think we had like 2 sessions or 3 sessions before, was really willing to kind of bring her, like she was like, okay, like it's I admit to my like issue or problem, and we can talk about it on stage, why not, like I don't care. And then we did like a demo snippet, and that was really popular. People really liked it, because and it was completely unscripted in the sense that we kind of knew the topic where we were going into, but I was able to show like the problem solving techniques. My background is in cognitive behavioral therapy, so it was kind of quite directly from there. Was able to use like problem solving techniques and kind of help the coachee forward with how she thought about the problem. So yeah, that was a pretty cool experience.
And I guess when it comes to seeking out advice, I guess most people know more about like a mentor scheme where you're going to someone who, you know, they don't have any specific qualifications in mental health or anything, but at least it's someone to talk to. Mm-hmm. So if you are, say, a very early stage startup, for example, you are like a one person, maybe, you know, you don't even have the budget for like kind of outside expertise to bring in. Like, how can you seek out a mentor? Kind of what's your advice? What should you be looking for in a good mentor?
Like this is something that Pipedrive has always had, this like one-on-one culture, in the sense that managers and teammates were always, since from the beginning, advised to better have more than less direct one-on-one conversations with each other. So I think this was also something that kind of prepared the company culture for a specialist role in that regard. But this is still done, like managers still have quite a lot of one-on-ones with their direct reports, and also employees are encouraged to have one-on-ones with each other. And I actually think that kind of having somebody as a mentor and having somebody as like a supporting shoulder or a listening ear can also be like a different person. Because mentoring is sometimes it is like a mentor can also provide like the space to just talk about your things, but mentoring is often kind of, there is a level of like a aspect of seniority, for example, because you wouldn't expect your mentor to, for example, be less experienced in your field or your field of interest. But at the same time, like a empathetic listener, a good listener, can be somebody even junior to you in your company or something like that. But so I think the most important thing for these types of people who are good listeners is exactly that. Be a good listener. Try to detach yourself from your personal agenda, because that's kind of something that I like to say, like what makes a counselor or a coach or a therapist or psychologist, what makes them different as a listener from a friend, for example, because lots of people do have friends they will talk to, and the difference, one major difference is the like the lack of invested empathetic involvement. Like if you're angry or sad and you talk about it to your friend, then kind of a measure to a certain extent of how good friend they are is how agitated also they will get, and kind of how much of that will they cry together with you, right? And
that's also important.
Yeah, which is also important, and even there's like a good anecdote about that. Like one of my when I was in therapy training, one of my co-students asked the professor, like, but how is it? Like, is it okay for a psychologist to cry when they're working with their patient? And the professor answered that it is okay to cry, but not more intensively than the patient does. Not more intensely. But the thing is that we as counselors, we are trained to provide like a empathetic and accepting space, and we do care about people we work with. I really, and that's I really like a lot of people I work with in Pipedrive, but at the same time, I'm more oriented towards the larger picture. I won't go together with them when they do have like an intense negative emotion. I provide the space, but I won't go there together with them. But a good friend does that. So and this is a potential pitfall of non-professionals trying to fill that role, is that emotions will be vented. Like usually people do feel better after that, but actually even this just venting together when it's like shared and the other person kind of goes together with you into that problem or into that emotion, that can actually help the emotion. Like there is a temporary relief, but the problem will actually linger on and might be even more sustained. There is some research to point out that if people actually like physically vent their anger and kind of then they can have a more negative memory of what actually had happened. So it can get sustained. And the other, I quickly want to point out that the other potential pitfall is, especially for I think organizations like companies and including startups, is that you can get a lot of what is called triangulation, in the sense that if somebody has some trouble with, let's say, person A, and they get along well with person B, then they will go to person B and talk to them about it and then kind of emotionally vent, whether it's like fear of something or being angry about something. And the person B will provide a good listening space and just listening space and be a good listener. Then the original person who had this problem, they will have the feeling that they have done something to solve the problem, whereas actually they have done nothing really. So this kind of person B gets triangulated into this relationship. Like they do act as a valve for pressure relief, but the problem is actually sustained by the fact that person B is a good listener. If the person B hadn't been there in the first place, maybe the tension would have gotten high enough so the problem becomes visible and then it can be solved. So this type of triangulation can actually facilitate in organizations, it can facilitate problems staying hidden and lingering on.
I see. And then you get office politics. And
yes, exactly. And somebody who's who has an eye to that, who is aware about that, and obviously all the listeners, like now you have maybe more awareness than you did before. Be wary of that triangulation. It's kind of like, okay, like if the problem is between you and them, like what can we do to actually solve it? Like, is there something that we can do to actually solve it? Or if there is no way to solve it, then what could we do to make the situation more bearable, more sustainable? Maybe there is like maybe person A needs to learn better coping techniques with certain high pressure situations. So that's kind of my other advice. Like one is you provide especially for people who have no training in the matter, learn what it takes to be a good listener. And the other thing is if you see a problem, then try to be problem oriented. So it's like you provide an open space, like if there is just something somebody talks about, but then try to think about like, can anybody do something to actually improve the situation? And if the answer seems no, nobody can do that, then what kind of outside resources can you include? Like, can you include a specialist? Like, I don't mean a mental health specialist. Maybe it needs to be a technical specialist who helps to solve that problem. Or it can be like maybe they need to go to a clinical psychologist. Also going.
Okay.
But
yes.
To your original question, that founders often, need to read how much money they have and if they can invest actually to have a personal coach, then my advice is that when you're in an early stage, ask for help. Then most probably you need much less sessions and it will be less costly for you as well. So I would better immediately contact someone who is a specialist in this area, and maybe you just need one session and you feel already so much better and you have some tools to help yourself.
It's kind of ironic in that like a startup like yours has like such good measures for supporting mental health, but then people just getting started with their own startup at a very early stage are like they're walking away from all the structures they had before that could have supported them, and they're on their own, and they're the people that most need help, but also the people with the least kind of help around them. So you're saying definitely kind of reach out to people. And listening to this, I'm getting a bit alarmed about the impact of the pandemic on all this, because we talked about the importance of kind of one-on-one meetings. I mean, the pandemic on its own is already like contributing to people's kind of mental health. And then on top of that, they can't have one-on-one meetings and kind of time with, their loved ones as much as before. How is this affecting kind of you guys at Pipedrive? How is it affecting your job in terms of supporting people with these one-on-one meetings?
Yeah, I think obviously it affects everybody, and it's still affecting all of us one way or another. And I think it was especially difficult at the beginning when the lockdown happened in March and everybody stayed at home. But actually we contacted many people and had like from people and culture team also like proactive one-on-ones with our employees to understand how they are feeling. And I think mostly actually people were quite okay. Like obviously some people who had like, many kids at home, it was obviously more difficult to manage the time. But we had people to share their best practices like daily. So it was very interesting to see that people started to read different articles, how to in the best way manage people remotely, how to manage your time, how to deal with kids and all the interruptions that you have at home, what you might not have at work. So I would say that we all learned a lot, and we are now in a much better place in case this needs to happen again. But
you mentioned people and culture a few times. Is that what you call HR, or is that your HR department is called people and culture?
Yes. Mm-hmm. In the past, it was also called HR, but it felt so wrong.
Yeah.
And I think the people and culture feels better fit actually what we are providing to the organization.
To me, human resources sound like what aliens would call kind of a term they would use at their slave colony or something, but I much prefer people and culture. So how does the culture side of it fit into supporting your team's mental health? What kind of culture do you set at Pipedrive?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, starting from one-on-one culture, obviously what is very important, and I think is it a pandemic or not, I think it's very important that people have regular discussions with their managers, with someone from people and culture team, or with friends from work, or with professionals like personal coaches. Because I think the most difficult part is when you don't talk about your issues and you keep it into yourself for a long time, then the one point, will be too much to handle and the explosion will happen. So this would be my first advice to do. But yeah, how we keep the cool culture. Obviously, it's so much easier to keep it when the office is open. We currently have our offices in Estonia open, and about half of our employees in Tallinn go every day to the office as well. In Tartu, it's much higher the percentage, and it makes sense as well. The group is smaller, and a new pretty office waiting for them. But also when we were on a lockdown, then we did different activities to keep people still engaged. Like in People and Culture team, for example, we did like every morning a short 15-minute coffee break. So really making sure that everybody have this motivation to get up, because this might be already difficult when being at home and not needing to catch the train or bus or being there in a certain time.
Yeah.
And it really helped. Like we didn't talk about work, we talked about different things, and actually we got to know about different people's hobbies so much better. And we had different challenges, like Fancy Friday, when people needed to dress up. So again, like maybe at home, it's very easy to just not put your proper clothes on.
Yeah.
But we had very funny pictures with guys with suits and swimming pens and under the table, basically. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Is there a particular, so mental health issues affect like literally everyone, but is there a particular problem with people working in startups, either founding startups or working for startups? I guess they tend to feel like they have to work long hours. There's perhaps lots of stresses, a lot more stresses. What kind of specific problems do people working in startups get in terms of mental health?
I think especially for small startups, people just they strive away from routines that sustain their health, and then you kind of have the extra occupational stress on top of that, because you can have deadlines, you have lots of uncertainty, like you're investing even the very condition that you're investing so much time and energy into something that you feel very passionate about, but you have no idea whether it will fly or not, and whether and even kind of, let's say you get your first one or two investors. Now you feel that you have kind of you have to prove to them that their investment was worth it, and you want to grow and you want to have this exponential growth. So that's how burnout is described. Like it's this continuous chronic occupational stress that will result in like you feeling lethargic, you feeling detached from your work, and decreased performance, right? But it is so closely to actually it's so closely connected to, I'm not even saying mental health, but health overall, because as we've also mentioned, like it's people in startups, especially early phase startups, you're so incentivized to kind of drop your exercise routines, eat less healthily, sleep less healthily, because yes, like Elon Musk can say that he sleeps for 5 hours per night, but Elon Musk probably also has really good doctors. So yeah, most of us, like it's in startups, the problem is one of the problems is the huge survivorship bias. Like we get focused on those very few who are very successful, but actually we shouldn't focus on kind of the exceptional few, but we should like look at, let's say, top 500 or top 1,000 startups and or startup founders and see what they have in common. So don't take after this one single very successful startup guy who says like, oh, I have this magic bullet, right? And I have used that, and that's what's worked for me. So it's the same, like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. I think they both dropped out of college. So it doesn't mean that everybody should drop out of college who wants to be successful.
So the solution here might be as simple as kind of making sure you ring fence time for kind of personal life, or getting to the gym, going for a walk.
Basically, the more stressful work becomes, the more you have to optimize like your. And I'm not saying like you shouldn't start to look, because that's also a thing. People look for easy ways out. They look for the magic bullets, and biohacking is a thing, right? But you should very much try to get your routine straight with the very basic health things. Like, are you eating your greens? Are you eating your protein? Are you getting in at least, I would say, 8 hours of sleep per night? And it's easy actually to talk yourself into having decent sleep, because it's like, yes, you can, for example, if you work very late and you have to get up early the next day, you will win some hours. But there's pretty good evidence that you will end up losing that productivity from the following days if you don't catch up on sleep. And also we know that kind of sleep lack of sleep or like it messes with your stress reaction, and then you tend to be more physiologically stressed when you're sleep deprived, and especially when we're talking about creative work, which early startup phase is for everybody involved, like the engineers, the whoever is doing the design, whoever is putting the elevator pitches together. It's creative work, and the more stressed you are, the less you are able to think outside the box. That's for a fact. Like it's when we get this fight or flight system activated in us, it like your even like your literal visual field will start to narrow down, because it's the system, or our stress response, our acute stress response has evolved to kind of either be able to chase something very specific or to run away from very specific. The problem is that in the times where those systems developed, and then the stressors were on very short spatial and time scale. But nowadays, like with startups, the stressors are on a long and abstract time scale.
It's interesting because you see the two extremes when it comes to fitness, because okay, I'm in kind of one extreme in that I haven't been to the gym in a long time. I'm really bad at giving myself time to go exercise, and I don't always eat very healthily. And sometimes, if I have a really long day, busy day at work, I just can't imagine kind of finding the time to do that. But then on the other extreme, you see people who, like in the startup scene, people who really optimize their bodily health as if they're optimizing their startup, who are kind of, really, can I call it an obsession with kind of physical fitness? Can that go too far as well?
Of course, and I don't think it's kind of inherent to specifically startups, but people can take over. Like it's whatever system you're building. Like if you have lots of stress at work, as it is the case in startups, it makes sense to optimize your kind of physical health routines. All the while, like every good system and every good routine is flexible. So I think that's the criteria of if it's becoming too obsessive. Is it becoming too rigid? So that's the question. If somebody is, yes, it makes sense to go to the gym, let's say 4 times per week on the same time, same gym, like you're wearing the same gloves. If you set that in place and it creates a routine, it will eliminate, like you don't have to make the decisions, right? It's like you don't have to make so many decisions. However, let's say you skip one time for whatever, you had a meeting on that time, or kind of you napped and you didn't wake up at the right time. If you start to freak out because of that I now missed my 4th time per week, which I have been doing for 5 to 6 weeks, and that was so perfect, and now I missed one time. If you start to freak out because of that, then it's a sign of a rigid system, which can kind of go wrong in so many ways.
But maybe something to add. So if one founder has a lot of people like you in the team, then one trick could be to do a team building. So you organize something with the team. It's much difficult to find excuse not to go.
Yeah.
And it's so much more fun to do something together as well. So maybe creating this kind of routines with the team, everybody will win. So something to think about.
But how do you, for your employees, how do you encourage them to kind of close down their laptops, switch off their phone, and go and do? How do you encourage them to get enough sleep at night, to go do their exercise, to make sure that they're not overworking?
The one possibility is what we did in our Mustamäe Street office is we added gym to the office. So I run totally out of excuses not to do sports anymore, because before it was always like, don't have time, like difficult to find the best balance. But I gave myself a promise that when the gym is ready and we move to the new office, then I will start to use it. And then actually later on, I took a personal coach for gym. And,
personal trainer.
Trainer, sorry.
I'm a personal coach.
Yes, sorry. Personal trainer. And she's actually a little bit like coach for me as well, because she's studying also psychology. So I get like 2 in 1 when I go to the sessions. But yeah, and for me, it's very easy that when I book the time in advance, it's in my calendar. So nobody don't run over with the meetings. And also I feel bad when I need to tell in the same day to the trainer that I'm not coming. So I have this social pressure, and this has helped me. Maybe it helps you as well to set up the good routine.
And in regards of exercise, don't consider only like formal exercise. Like it's like most people you can't create a form of formal exercise like 6 days a week or something like that. But it's also about like, are you walking to work? Do you take a bike ride now and then? Something like that. These things. If you live very close by, like can you maybe you should set your mobile phone to like ring every 2 hours, and when it rings you look outside the window and do even, I don't know, like 1 squat or 2 squats maybe. Because like with movement is that like any movement is better than nothing. So when it comes down to like, and I don't want to use the word exercise because that's kind of I have to go to the gym, but it's not only gym, like play with your dog if you have a dog, etc.
Yeah, and also one option is actually to have meetings walking outside. So if you have people in the same office, why not to actually have your one-on-one discussion when walking next to the beach? Very, very good possibility. And it also actually gives a different view of the people. So there was one period when I did it a lot. And, some people, when you start the one-on-one, they walk very quickly. So, so it's difficult to catch up a little bit. And then you understand that when they calm down, the walk will calm down as well. So it also gives a good information, actually, when having a discussion.
Oh, very good during a pandemic as well.
Because you can also have, like, it's I haven't specifically recommended that to anybody, but I think I have now like my main working space is in Tartu, but I work with people all over the Pipedrive, quite a few people from Tallinn. I think 2 of my like ongoing coaches, they are now doing like we're doing the walking video call. Like they have themselves decided like, okay, I'm gonna have this session, and they go somewhere where it's beautiful to walk for that time, and they do walk for the hour that we talk to each other.
We've talked about burnout a few times, and I guess all of us we hear it a lot as a warning about what to avoid. I don't really know what burnout is and like kind of what it feels like. Like, what is burnout?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's not first of all, like it's not a clinical term. So kind of it's not like a that well specified term. And if you go, for example, into scientific literature, there's like tons and tons of articles on burnout. Like I think it started in 70s and first they started to look into medical workers. But quite often you see that, for example, you have like self-report tests for burnout, and there are many different tests. So there's actually, they can be quite different to each other, and even the term burnout, like in research in 80s and 90s, like some article can define it in one way and the other can define it in another way. But now what has happened now is that now the World Health Organization has kind of described it in the International Classification of Disease, but not as a disorder or disease, but it's described as a occupational phenomenon. So it's kind of, if you do want to have a definition, then it's this phenomenon that is work related and which results in like work related, as I said before, detachment and fatigue and decreased performance. But as I said, I also personally don't really like the term because language matters a little bit, and I think it's a bit catastrophizing, because it's like you can't give a clear recipe what to do against these types of feelings, and I say it's connected to, obviously, to mental health. When you stay in this chronic stress mode for a long time, one probably starts to develop symptoms of depression, which can be easily kind of described, or if you want to do a self-check, like really like a non-scientific self-check, is that or check somebody else. It's like it's 3 times minus M, so it's three words that begin with M for a easier memorization. So it's negative mood. So obviously if you felt, and the change is important. If somebody was a jolly person before and now you see that they are kind of lethargic or appear sad for over some period of time, you can ask them like, what's wrong? Like negative mood. So the second one is in no particular order. It's negative musings or thoughts. Like you're thinking about negative stuff. So you're thinking about stuff that doesn't inspire you or doesn't condone meaning into your life. But your thought process, that if you reflect upon, like, okay, what I'm thinking about, then if it's only stuff that's negative, that's things that make you sad or anxious or something like that, it's another warning sign. And then the third warning sign, the third M, is negative motivation or decreased motivation, which is basically just the will and kind of energy to do anything, really. So if you're having like a decrease in those three criterias or any one of those three criterias, it's a possible warning sign, like decreased mood, decreased motivation, negative thoughts or musings. And these kind of are basically the symptoms for also depression. But for if it's work related, like you can't give like a clear advice that, okay, if somebody's experiencing this, like they should take a vacation. No, that's not so black and white. Because for some people, taking a vacation and getting rest, functional rest, like getting good sleep, moving about, eating well, it can do the trick. But at the same time, for somebody else, let's say if they just take a vacation, but the only thing they will think about during the vacation is how much work they're going to have to do when they come back, it's not going to help them in any way. And the other thing is that for some people, which is also something to consider, if when somebody is experiencing prolonged work-related stress, and they do need to have a rest, but maybe it makes sense for them to stay connected to the work while they're doing the rest. And for some, it's very contraindicated. So yeah, because it might be that some specialists they actually kind of like their work. They take pride in their professionalism, and if you cut that person totally out from the work environment, they might feel worse. So it makes sense to kind of, people are different. It makes sense to talk it through, talk about previous experience, like talk about, okay, you had a week-long vacation then. How did it feel then? Did you feel better when you came back? No. Okay, what do we need to then? Like we need to decide, like, will you have a 2-week vacation now? Will you change jobs? Will you take an easier workload? Like maybe this current position is too much personal responsibility. And this is one thing I really like about Pipedrive and Pipedrive engineering organization especially, is that you have a lot of individual mobility in regards to your tasks. For example, currently in Pipedrive engineering, the team lead role is something that literally every engineer can try. We have focused teams for focused tasks. We call those teams mission teams, or they do a mission, and leading a mission is something that somebody can just try, that if it's something for them or not. So you have these people who lead many missions, who are very experienced, but you also do see the situations where a junior engineer will lead a mission and have seniors in their team doing technical work, but they are focused mostly on the leadership qualities and kind of working together with project management. And also in other parts of organization, like we have quite a lot of within company mobility, like people change careers within the company for different reasons. So this is something that needs to be considered. Like if somebody is experiencing prolonged occupational stress, do they need to change jobs completely? Do they need to take a prolonged rest, or maybe they just need to change a role, or their responsibility can be scaled?
You know, I've had problems in the past with panic attacks, and it made me think of that when you mentioned about the importance of language, because panic attack is another example of like a really stupid name. It's two like very dramatic words, and you shouldn't use the word attack. And part of the help I got was kind of being taught how to rethink about these kind of things. And they're not panic attacks; they're moments of anxiety. You can accept them, kind of. You can let them wash over you, and that was really important for me. So absolutely agree with that. What kinds of range, without giving too much away, because obviously, you've got to keep people's trust and confidence. What kind of range of problems do you tend to get people most commonly coming to you for?
It's really, really different in the sense that that I would say like it's all the way from with some people it's like purely self-reflection and kind of self-development, going into all the way into the topics like what's the meaning of life and where this person should go, like in the broader sense, right? Where I don't take any role of expertise. I just provide some reflection and kind of provide the space where they can basically talk out loud and reflect upon those topics, right? I would say if we count by kind of number, I've worked with almost 100 people now, 100 different people in Pipedrive. So I think if I would count by number, most things are kind of self-performance and work-related, performance-related. But there is a range there as well. It can be, for example, like social anxiety and trying to manage that better, because Pipedrive, I think, is a bit more social compared to other IT-focused companies. Like you have a lot of options to do, like also present some topics and then kind of teach other engineers, so forth. So social anxiety, present your missions and results and these things. So as opposed to kind of being very focused on your narrow area and your own computer. So you have the issue of social anxiety and then public speaking performance. You obviously, time management is a big thing. Just wanting to become better and more efficient at organizing your time, spending less time on kind of maybe on longer scale, less meaningful things like browsing your social media or something like that. This is a topic like wanting to become better, more efficient as a person, not just
I need help with that.
Yeah. What is surprising, what has been surprising, for example, is that kind of when the role was founded, we were expecting to get more like interpersonal conflict work, because there are things in teams happening and kind of people feeling that maybe there's some friction with somebody else, but there's surprisingly little of that. But talking about things that are there is also the mental health topics. There are people who, because by going by the statistics, it's like depends on how you exactly count, but probably I think around like 10% people are experiencing symptoms of depression at any given moment. So if you take a company the size of 600 people, then it's 60 people, right?
It's 10% of people in the whole world, like
Yeah. It can range like depending on if it's self-report or clinical, etc., etc. But so you do have people who, for example, develop mental health issues inside Pipedrive. You mentioned panic attacks. Like there have been cases where people have talked about their surprising anxiety, like they haven't had like thing like this before, and then like having a dedicated role, it's a super low barrier of entry, right? You can basically send the message like, oh my god, I woke up with this terrible anxiety, like what should I do, right? As opposed to like waiting for weeks to get a doctor's appointment or something like that.
And I guess it's not always the people you might assume. It kind of
course not. And then there are people who already, for example, who join Pipedrive. They do have existing mental health conditions. They have existing working relationships with their doctor and possibly clinical psychologist, but then just having a role where they can talk to a person with kind of also professional background, it can be another welcome resource for them to use. Like they're completely functional. They have joined Pipedrive this way, but it can kind of help to support them even better in the possible struggles they can have.
It's really great that times have changed to an extent where there are companies that would know about those things in advance and still say kind of like, absolutely, you are valuable to this company. Like,
well, it's usually like it's to cut you off there, like often times company doesn't know about that, and they maybe shouldn't know, and it should be, and if they like it would be a very, very terrible thing if somebody would be discriminated on the basis of that, but they can use that extra resource the company provides.
But I find it interesting that I guess in the past you would see kind of like getting support for your mental health as like a very big step to take in isolation. Whereas for you, kind of support for mental health is embedded into everything else you offer people. It's kind of, it's not like you're making a big decision to go see a therapist about your mental health. You're seeing a personal coach anyway, and it's one thing you can talk about.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like even if the person comes like, oh, it's I let's say I want to develop better exercise habits, for example, which is also something I've like building habits, building functional habits is very much a topic I talk to a lot of people about that. I still ask them like, oh, like I start the session with how are you feeling this morning? So kind of maybe they haven't thought about that. So and even if it's like a overall mentally very healthy person, they talking to me, they will take that second and reflect upon that. Okay, so how am I actually feeling today? And does it bear any significance?
In addition to kind of like, the one-on-one coaching, kind of what other broader measures do you have to support people's well-being?
Yeah, first of all, we care about our people. I think it starts from there, and we choose the right people who fit to our organization. So the no excuses was one of the values that was presented, but there are many others like internal drive and so on. And from there, it's also important that we take care of our people and we ask how they are doing, and we notice those differences what Jorgen brought out. And obviously providing a good environment, which also hopefully lowers stress because we have, for example, dogs in the office, which I think will make a big difference. I do have now a dog myself, and I can see that when I enter the office with my dog, like everybody are smiling. So it's very hard to be like stressed out when you cuddle the dog or something like that. And we have like health days also. We provide this like possibility to take massage in the office or go to gym. Or
we have dedicated napping rooms.
Yes,
napping room and a sauna.
Tartu and Tallinn office, and there is there is a sauna which is often used like in a social context, but I think the napping rooms are really good like example, because it's like I remember that from my onboarding. I was kind of told that it's if you're feeling groggy, whatever was the reason that you didn't get good enough sleep, right? It doesn't make sense if you sit at your desk and kind of pretend to be awake, right? Go take that half an hour or maybe even like 120 minutes, like and then do some actual work, right?
So you're saying people don't get judged if they in the middle of the working day get up and go for a nap?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's like nobody checks, and I have. Not like in the new office, but in the old Tartu office, I have used that opportunity. I think 3-4 times, setting it. It was like in old office, it was just like a small room without windows, like and the couch basically, and I just I wanted to get off my desk, was feeling sleepy. Put on a podcast for 20 minutes, lay down in a dark room, like no screen, set an alarm for 20 minutes, which is like my personal preferred like power nap time. And it was either I just got my mind off by staying awake and listening to a podcast, and or I drifted away and got a really good like small nap.
So maybe someone in Pipedrive is listening to this right now in a napping room.
Yeah, can well be.
You mentioned health days. What are the health days?
So we provide 3 extra days that people can use in 1 year to really charge their batteries. So it's used for just extending your vacation or taking care of your health. So we don't charge. How do you use
it? It's like no questions asked. It's like
exactly.
and people are also encouraged. Like and I've seen managers to do it. Is like is if somebody is saying that, hey, like it's I feel really crappy today, or it's like for example in case of migraines, like lots of people have migraines. Like no point in coming to work if you start the day with a migraine, right? You can just and at the same time, it's maybe if it's somebody who has migraine episodes, it's still a hassle to like phone your general practitioner doctor and kind of take an official day off, but you can just take a health day. So like you will tell to your manager that I won't come in today, and that's that.
And some people listening to this will be thinking this all sounds awesome, but they don't have room for a sauna in their office, or if they're working from home. Maybe they do have space they can nap, but like, what are the broader lessons that people can take away from this? If you are like a very small company, what lessons can you take from the kind of culture and what you've seen that works for helping people work more productively, be more motivated, more mentally healthy?
I would say it's for starters, it's like make mental health a topic that is openly talked about, and kind of, especially like if it's like already a company of, let's say, 10 people, right? You have there people who are like who have more responsibilities for people, right? You have some specialists who are very focused on their like specialist role, but you have somebody who is kind of more of a people manager. They might be doing a specialist job as well. So that's something that comes with a role of manager, is that be aware that mental health is a thing. It's very connected to physical health, so kind of build this rapport and trusting relationship with your coworkers, so you can talk about these things. Like, find out if they do engage in exercise, find out what are their mental health practices. There's like, in regards to mental health, if you could say one magic bullet is take care of your physical health, and kind of it will support your mental health. Other things are very, very individual. Like some people thrive well while they're very connected to work all the time. Some people don't. Some people really like the mindfulness measures, which kind of used to be this all the rage about, like in startups 5 to 10 years ago. Now it has kind of died down a little bit, but still is used. But it's not also like, while mindfulness and kind of, it's a really easy access mental health practice, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. So if maybe it makes sense for this small startup to kind of do like a short breathing session together every Monday, but don't judge that one guy who says that he doesn't want to do it, because
Because I guess like some people think a great company culture is like socializing with your colleagues outside of work and doing lots of things. And then some people working in the same place will think a great company culture is being able to get away from them at the end of the day and go to your own, have your separate life. Yeah,
and actually I think a good company, especially if it grows, you can't have all the people alike. It's like statistically impossible. Also, if you're going to bring in different people, you're more likely to get different talents. So yeah, it's and this is also kind of why like the traditional team building, like going out with your colleagues or something, it just needs to be kept in mind that basically whatever you're doing, it's never gonna be for everybody. So think about how, let's say you go, I don't know, you go karting together, right? And it's gonna be great for 8 people out of 10. But also then consider like, okay, there's 2 people who don't like noise and driving and they won't come. So how you're gonna include them tomorrow? Because it's gonna be important, because if you just focus on kind of these team building fun activities, there's always going to be somebody left out, or there's always going to be somebody who can't make it, who won't enjoy the experience. So you need to kind of think one step ahead, and it's like, how is that person going to get involved? How are we building the connections with them as well? And for example, this one-on-one culture, talking to people about how they're doing, can be one way to do that.
Yeah,
and kind of socializing around also common goals, like talking about and reiterating like, what are our common goals and common values. There's actually I have conducted quite a few workshops now in Pipedrive as well, where it's been like a small team who wants like a team building event. There's a free tool called Team Canvas. It's kind of inspired by business model Canvas, which is probably familiar for quite a lot of listeners. I think it's, if you Google Team Canvas, you'll find it, which is just a canvas for a team to talk through, like, what are their shared interests, what are their shared values, what are their individual strengths and weaknesses as members of the team, etc., etc. And this is really functional team building, because it provides this sense of connection, and at the same time, it's kind of it's literally building this team in relation to the goal that the team is having.
And I think it all starts from hiring. Even if you have very small team, make sure that you have someone who is more caring and more noticing people around, and many things you can do without any big budget as well. People have already their own hobbies and interests, what they maybe want to share with others and so on. So I think even if you are a very, very small startup, you can already have a lot of good things in place, and start with knowing exactly what you want in your environment and in your culture.
And how do you measure the success of what you're doing? How do you know that kind of you're establishing a good company culture? How do you know that kind of your work is having a good impact on overall morale?
I think it's coming from the feedback. When you go to the office and you see happy people there who would like to actually socialize with their colleagues, or we do also employee NPS surveys where we get very different feedback, obviously both good and bad, because it's important to also work on those things what could be improved, and not to hide them somewhere under the table. So I think it's this open culture, and then that you know that you can actually share openly if you think something should be improved, because we all work for the same goal. And we all should be contributing to make it better. Is it the culture, the environment, or the product?
I want to tell you the best experience I had in this area when I was working for a small, fast-growing company, and I was having my problems with stress and like with confidence. And I had a chat with, we weren't big enough to have a personal coach or anything like that. We didn't even have like kind of HR, but I had a chat with the CEO, and when I was chatting to him, we were thinking through different ideas, and it came up in conversation that, well, there's a boxing club near me, which I thought looked really interesting. And so he said, okay, well, the company's going to sponsor your boxing. And so he paid for weekly lessons. He paid for gloves and like boxing outfit for me. And at the time I thought that was like amazing. The cost of that investment in my boxing career, which never did take off, but the cost of that investment was so valuable compared to how it made me more motivated at work, how that developed my confidence. And I guess it's a good example of taking an individual approach. There's no one size fits all. There's no one solution for everyone. You've got to listen to the person and figure out what works best for them.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, and kind of more universally, and also to inspire all those small company CEOs and small company, there is this one HR person. You don't have to step outside the area of your expertise and figure it out. It's help the person to find a good psychologist, or in case of if it's seems like a more actual mental health issue, a psychiatrist first. Help them find a good specialist. Allow the as you said, you can finance one session with a private practitioner. If they say they didn't like it, finance another with somebody else. So because with these specialists, you need to have a more personally fitting relationship. So and also statistically, obviously, I'm biased here, but the money invested in mental health and in mental health specialist, it yields actually a very good return. And then the person can figure out together with somebody neutral what's a good step for them to take. Maybe it's going boxing, right?
This has been really valuable. I've learned a lot today, which I'm gonna do differently. But I guess the main thing we've learned today is start talking and start acknowledging that mental health is something that affects all of us. Make sure you do block out time for other things other than just working intensely on work. Yeah. And seek out a mentor, seek out a coach. If you can hire someone like you, then that is obviously the best thing possible. But still, there's various levels leading up to that, where you can get some outside support on a very small basis if you're starting out, or if you can seek out a mentor who, someone that you respect, someone a bit more senior than you, in the same kind of industry, who understands the issues you're facing.
And I really want to kind of normalize seeing a actual mental health specialist as well, because like, what's the worst can happen? They're going to tell you that you're fine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what, if someone is, there must be someone listening to this who is having problems and they haven't spoken to anyone about it, and they don't know where to start. Maybe they are a first-time founder. They don't have a support network around them. What should they do?
Well, it obviously depends on the financial side as well. But if you do have the money, I would say the quickest is to find like an established and trusted, what seems like an established and trusted private clinic, and maybe start from either a psychologist or a psychiatrist there. And if you go and you don't like the experience, like, give feedback about it, and they're gonna recommend you another one with somebody else. So don't. Or if they seem to take it personally, then they're definitely not the person you should be talking to anyway. So yeah, give mental health specialists a try and see what value can they offer.
And if you don't have the money, go public.
Yes,
find
to
what you can
to the national healthcare system, and especially if you are struggling with finances, want to go to the national healthcare system, you can start from your general practitioner. Open up the topic with them. They can actually refer somebody also to a psychologist in Estonia, and for psychiatrists, you can book a time with psychiatrist without going through your GP first. So you can go directly. Just do it well in advance, because the waiting time can be in months.
Leelia, Jorgen, like, I found this so valuable. For one thing, I'm going to stop talking about work-life balance, and I'm going to stop talking so dramatically about burnout. But I'm also going to, use a lot of the advice you've given me. I'm sure people listening will take away lots of valuable lessons from this as well. So thank you so much for talking to us about Pipedrive and talking to us about your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so you've been listening to the Startup in Estonia podcast produced by Startup Estonia. Keep following us at Startup Estonia on social media for more content like this. And also to find out how Estonia is supporting startups with both local entrepreneurs and international founders. And if you want to add to the conversation, if you've been listening to the show and there are things you want to add, then please use the hashtag Startup in Estonia on whichever social media you prefer. And I would love to keep chatting to you there. Thank you.